I'm Jan. I live in Folkestone in a very nice area because I've got the sea in front of me. I've got people walking past. So I people watch a lot. That helped me in lockdown because I found that I could sit on my balcony because if we recall, it was quite a nice weather. So we were able to get out and be outside as much as we could at that time. And I just found that people were friendlier as they walked past. They'd nod, they'd say hello, they'd wave. And when I went out for my walk, I find that people would talk, and I'd take an interest in the mums with the children because, well, I'm a grandma, so I like to always take an interest in children. And I do remember one little boy who wanted to hold my hand and walk with me, and obviously his mum was quite worried, and so we just managed to pass the time of day, and he went on. And I do remember too, a young woman, she'd had her baby, and it was obviously a very new baby, and I spoke to her, and she sort of welled up and she said, my mum hasn't seen him yet. Her mum lived in the north of England, and I couldn't go and peer into the pram at that time and look, but I looked as much as I could, and we had a long conversation about the baby, and I never saw her again. I often wondered how she got on, but I hope that helped her a bit. So my day, what did I do during lockdown? Well, I took a great interest in housework in the early days. I found that I was cleaning like mad. Cupboards. I scrubbed all the grouting on the bathroom floor one day. Why would you do that? Yeah, so I got a bit obsessed with cleaning to begin with. Then I decided that was no good. So then I started going back to my lace because I make lace. So I did some bobbin lace, and I filled my time. One of the things that I did find that helped me a lot was Zoom. I think we all got introduced to Zoom at that time. And I'm a member of rock choir, and I'd only just joined. So I'd had about 2 or 3 months at rock choir, and suddenly I was deprived. But they came up with these Zoom sessions. So twice a week I would be on Zoom singing my heart out here in the living room, and my husband went to the bedroom because he couldn't stand it. I just found it so good, so uplifting. I saw people, but I wasn't singing with them. It was just me singing because of the time lapse of computers. We couldn't all sing together and hear each other's voices. We did it as an experiment once, and it sounded awful, but it was quite funny. But that helped an awful lot. And I had Zoom meetings with my Seroptimist group, which is an organisation which seeks to improve the lives of women and girls across the world. So we had monthly Zoom meetings there, and I managed to keep in contact with people as much as I could. But I found in the early days, shopping was really, really difficult. I remember queuing at Sainsbury's when they first introduced that. Getting up early, which is against my nature to get up early in the morning. Getting up early and going and standing in a queue and going round the shop. It was so weird right in the very beginning because there was only about 50 or 60 people in the shop. And you had this vast empty supermarket walking round, and you're thinking, well, what do I need? What do I want? So that was strange. My husband was shielding, but I still found it difficult to get supermarket delivery slots. Eventually I managed to do it. With my husband, because he had all these problems, it did make it more difficult. During that first lockdown, he had a minor heart attack, and he was whisked off to the William Harvey Hospital. I was left here, of course, not knowing what would happen. And he was in there for 2 weeks. I couldn't go and visit him, and I found it incredibly hard. And I honestly thought, I'm not going to see him again. The reputation of the William Harvey, of course, is not great. And I found that, what if he got COVID? He's so vulnerable. It was such a hard time in that respect. I used to have a friend who came, and she'd stand in the doorway or stand on the driveway and talk, and she'd bring a gin and tonic, and I'd stand with my gin and tonic, and we'd have a chat. But she couldn't come in or anything, which I found strange. How did we get ourselves into that situation? Why did we allow ourselves to be locked down? I often question it now, as I think other people must do now. But, well, that's what we did, didn't we? And then my daughter lives in France, and when her father was in hospital, she was obviously worried. Shall I come home, Mum? And I said, well, I don't know. I might need you more later. So she didn't come home, but I did wonder at one point whether I'd ever see her again. And it did break up families a lot. It must have been very, very hard. It was hard for me being alone here for 2 weeks. It must have been hard for everybody, I don't know. But, for my own self, I did find that I was thinking about, would I see anybody? Was I sort of depressed? No, I wasn't depressed, but I was worried and I was concerned. And I think my mental health did suffer. And I know when John came home from hospital, God, was I pleased to see him, pleased to have him home. I think he went through it a bit because I'd suffered, so I didn't exactly take it out on him, but nevertheless there was frustrations there which probably wouldn't have come out in quite the way they would have done under normal circumstances. So yeah, I think my mental health has gone down a bit, and John's must have done as well. So, but we try to keep ourselves buoyant and keep ourselves going and do things. We'd have our sort of little wine times here, the two of us, and not exactly date nights, but try and do something a bit different with a meal or with the evening. Just things to keep your spirits up. I found that I was watching late night television, and a Friday night on BBC Two they have all the old pop programmes. There we were sitting up till 2 o'clock in the morning, bopping away, singing all the old songs, and so that kept you going a bit. But yeah, very, very strange times. And then we were allowed to meet a little bit with people, 6 of us I think it was to start with. Where I live, we decided that we'd have wine time, so a notice was put up and we decided to have wine time in our car park at the back. So we'd go outside with our glass of wine and we'd all socially distance apart but just sit there talking, and that was so nice. And what that's done has actually made a little community here, which we didn't have before. We all sort of lived in our own separate little flats, said good morning, good evening, and and just passed the day. But now we've got a community, and our wine time still continues. In the summer, we're out the back enjoying the sunshine in the car park. But in the evening, this time of year, in the winters, we go to someone's flat and we have 6 or 7 of us meet up. We still take our own wine and our own glasses, but it's just that nice social element. And we've started having lunches as well. Not too many, but it does mean that, because a lot of people who live here are by themselves, and it does mean that people know that they can now call on someone, which we didn't have before. So some positive things have come out of this lockdown. So it was a very strange time, lockdown. We thought we were doing it for the best, and we were. Couldn't overwhelm the national health at the very early days. They didn't know much about the disease, about the virus, the way it would mutate, what would happen. But it is something now that we've got to live with, like flu. It no more than that now, isn't it? We do need to keep our jabs going and things. But how will we view it in the future? How do we view it now? I mean, I look back sometimes and I think, well, and I think I said earlier, did we allow ourselves to be locked down? Why did we allow ourselves to go into that state? Would we do it again? Would we do that? And how will the future see us? How will my great-grandchildren see us in this time? I think they'd be quite incredulous that we were kept in our houses and kept isolated and kept from one another. But that's what we had to do. It was a difficult time,